Looking for more Nintendo series to get into, but you've only played the big series? So the stereotype of a quote-unquote Nintendo fan that only plays Mario and Zelda has been around for a while. Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Animal Crossing, like the big Nintendo series, the mainstream ones that everyone knows about. But it's been talked about more recently. Scott the Woz did a video about it. And I say quote-unquote Nintendo fan because a lot of people will just shame them or put them down because they don't play every single Nintendo game. And there's nothing wrong with that. If someone only likes Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, if they only like the big franchises, there's nothing wrong with that. But Nintendo makes a lot more. And there's a lot of other series you may want to give a try, especially with how many games are on the Nintendo Switch and how many NSO games there are. If you have a subscription, you can already play a lot of games in the series and see if it's something that you're into. So let's start first with Pikmin. So I first played Pikmin back on the Wii U with Pikmin 3, and since then I've gotten into the series. As you can see, I have Pikmin 4 and the 1+2 collection, and they're all very good games. There's not a bad game here except Hey Pikmin, which I do not have a physical copy of, and you can skip that, but they have a lot of that Nintendo charm, and there's really nothing quite like it that Nintendo makes. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably know the basics of Pikmin, so I'm not just gonna go over every single detail, but the reason I think it's worth playing is just how satisfying it is when you find treasure or fruit or anything, and when you finally defeat a boss. And it's hard to explain, but if you've played these games, you know. They all do have different premises, and if you're looking to get into the series, the one I can recommend first, if you want to just have the most accessible game, I would say is Pikmin 4. However, if you want to understand the series more, if you want to go in order, playing them 1 through 4 is not a bad option either. But you may be saying, okay, like this is kind of like an RTS game, more of a strategy game, I'm not really into that. Am I going to like Pikmin? Maybe not, it's not a game for everyone. But it's a very easy game to learn, even though it looks like a lot with all the different Pikmin running around. It is easy to control them, except the AI can be kind of clunky sometimes, and in some of the games it really feels like you can't explore because of the time limit, so there are flaws. This is not a perfect series, but none of these games are very long either. Like, you can beat these games in a fair amount of time. It's not something like Xenoblade, which I have a tough time recommending to a lot of people because these games take like 100 hours, it takes like 20 hours to really get into it. But Pikmin is a game, you do your basic tutorials and pretty much get started from there, and it's kind of a relaxing game. At least for me. Like, there are stressful moments, but it's fun to explore and fun to find every single thing hiding. If you like Mario games or 3D platformers that are kind of collectathons, you may like the series, not because the gameplay is similar, but because you're going to want to try to collect every single thing the game has to offer. It just kind of pushes you towards that. And like I said, the gameplay loop is very satisfying. Plus, who doesn't like the Pikmin themselves? Next up is a series that I think is a little harder to get into, and it's Metroid. So I haven't always been the biggest Metroid fan. I really only started playing it back in 2017 with Samus Returns on 3DS. And barely anyone played that since it came out after the Switch came out on the 3DS, but it really got me into the series. So unlike Pikmin, which is kind of like a charming, like not stress-free, but kind of relaxing game at points, or like a cuter game, Metroid is the complete opposite. It's one of Nintendo's most mature series, and it's not a game for everyone. These games don't take very long for the most part, but they are games where you're going to get lost all the time, especially some of the older ones and the earlier Prime games. Like, these are games that you shouldn't be ashamed if you have to look something up if you're really lost. I know that's kind of taboo, but if you're stuck on something for so long in the game, you don't want it to just ruin the experience. So don't be afraid to just get like a little hint of where to go next. But there's not many bad Metroid games. There's a few. I have a tough time recommending Metroid on NES and Metroid 2, just because they are very outdated. If you're looking to get into the series, I think the best bet to start with is Metroid Zero Mission. It's a game you could beat in a few hours. You're not going to get lost that many times, at least I didn't. It is on NSO if you have the Game Boy Advance, if you have that version of NSO, and the movement feels really good in that. It doesn't feel clunkier like the first two games, but Metroid Zero Mission is a remake of the original. And I know a lot of people understand the premise of Metroidvania but don't really want to give it a shot. But for those of you who don't, it's kind of like a platformer, or there is platforming, but instead of just going from point A to point B, you're just going through an entire map, unlocking new abilities. Like, let's say there's a ledge that's too high, you can't reach it. So you know you're going to have to come back to that, but you go there after you unlock a higher jump or something like that. And if you're good with remembering things like that, like not mapping out the entire game, but you can remember this area had something that I couldn't reach. I can jump higher now, I should go back there. If you can remember things like that, if that's something that sounds interesting to you, Metroid or even other Metroidvanias are for you. Now, some of them I can understand being tougher to get into. Like, I really love Hollow Knight, but it is a very long game. It took me like 25 hours to beat, and it's a very difficult game. It can get very frustrating. But Metroid games, for the most part, are not that hard, at least most of them. And some of these you can beat in a few hours. There's not many 2D Metroid games where you're going to take more than like 8 or 9 hours. Maybe like Dread probably took me the longest. But just getting stronger, getting these new abilities, it's actually pretty addicting if you really get into the game. Now, as for the best in the series, if you don't want to start with Zero Mission, Super Metroid's a good place to start. And if you have even the $20 NSO, you could play it. And for that, I tell people there's literally no excuse to not try it. Give the game an hour. for. If you don't get into it at that point and want to give up, that's whatever, you didn't lose anything. But I think a lot of people just won't give this game a chance because it's so much different from what Nintendo is doing, and it is more of a complex game. But just give it a try, especially on NSO, where you can use the save states and you can use the rewind feature. And does that hurt the experience? Maybe, but it certainly makes it easier. So if that helps you get through the game, all power to you. Also, I do just want to talk about the Metroid Prime games for a second, because they're very different from the 2D games. These are not the most accessible games besides the first one, because 2 and 3 are not playable on Switch. In fact, you either need to have a Wii or a GameCube for them, and then find the games, and a couple of them are a little pricier, depending on how you want to play it, if you want to get the collection. So Metroid Prime Remastered, great game, one of the best FPS games of all time. Definitely harder to get into. I think the 2D games are a little easier to get into, so I'd say start with those. And then for Metroid Prime 4, which has just been talked about a lot recently since it came out in December, if you like Metroid Prime Remastered, if you play that, if you like the 2D Metroid games, it is worth playing. I think it's a decent game. I had fun with it, and a lot of people just hate it, and they're not even willing to accept that people like it. Like, they'll just say you're just pretending to like it. Listen, it has a lot of issues, but if you're a big enough fan of the Metroid series, I think it's at least worth a try. So the next one I want to talk about is a series I'm actually not a big fan of, but I did still want to bring it up, and that's Fire Emblem. So I loved Fire Emblem Awakening on the 3DS. It's easily my favorite game in the series. I played Fire Emblem Fates, couldn't really get into it as much, but I think it is a series that a lot of people will like if you're into strategy RPGs, if you're into customizing your party, if you're into, I guess, anime games now, because it's kind of the direction the series has gone, and I'm not a big fan of that personally, but a lot of people are. And I don't have as much to say about this because, like I said, unlike with Pikmin and Metroid, where I've played the games where I'm a big fan of those, Fire Emblem I haven't played too many. I've thought about getting Three Houses, but I'm typically not big into strategy RPGs like that. However, something like Awakening I really got hooked on, and it's something I can recommend if you have even the slightest interest in that kind of series. But I would take advice from someone who knows more Fire Emblem than me to know which games you should start off playing. So the next one I want to talk about is the Earthbound or Mother series. So you all know this because I'm sure all of you have played Smash, and like I said, that's not a series I'm talking about in this video because everyone plays Smash. But you know it because of Ness, because of Lucas. But there's a good chance a lot of you have played Undertale or Deltarune, and if you have Earthbound to thank for it. So it's the same style of game, and it's really weird to explain. Like, I don't know how to explain it. The only thing I could say is if you like Undertale, you will most likely really like Earthbound, and maybe even the original Mother game, which I know that one isn't as popular. And Mother 3, there's not an official way to play it in English, but there's a very readily available fan translation. So if you're into Undertale, that's something I can recommend. Tomodachi Life is one that's getting a lot more attention now for obvious reasons, because after 12 years, I think, we're finally getting a sequel to the 3DS Tomodachi Life. So everyone knows Animal Crossing. You've all played Animal Crossing. I would bet probably 95% of you have played Animal Crossing. But Tomodachi Life, a lot of you probably played if you had a 3DS, but kind of a niche game. And it's a lot different than Animal Crossing. It's another simulation game, but it's a completely different style. Instead of just moving around your own town, building it, just being your own villager, in this, or the 3DS version, I should say, you create up to 100 Miis, and then you just watch them become friends, start dating, get married, have kids. And it's just a very simple game that gets really addicting. So I can't say anything for the Switch version since it's not out yet. I'm looking forward to it. And it's a much easier game than Animal Crossing, where there's a lot of grinding in Animal Crossing to get bells. So you could upgrade your house, you could upgrade the town. That's not so much the case in Tomodachi Life. You kind of just create Miis and then you just wait. If you see the bubble that has either the green friend light or the pink one, which means they want to either go on a date or get married or something, you just talk to them, set them up with other Miis, and everything else you can do in the game is just purely for fun. Like the concerts in the original game, like that doesn't actually do anything, it's just fun. So if that all sounds interesting to you, if you're into like cozy simulation games like that, if you're maybe into Pokopia, even though it's a completely different game, but you like the vibe of that, you can definitely recommend Tomodachi Life. And because it is a $60 game, and I'm definitely not saying to pick up the 3DS version since it's like $100 now, but I'd say maybe just watch some gameplay of it, see if it's something you want to pick up, and just go from there. And the last series I want to talk about in this video, and it's one I didn't even know if I wanted to include, it's the Donkey Kong series. So a lot of people lump this in with Mario games, but it's completely different. So for the most part, when you think of Donkey Kong games, you're thinking of like the 2D Donkey Kong Country games, and that's mostly what I'm talking about, but there's a couple others. So there's the 3 on the SNES, there's Donkey Kong Country Returns, which you can play on Switch, Tropical Freeze, which is on the Wii U and Switch, and they're literally not a bad game here. They're much different than Mario games. Like, they are much more difficult games. If you're looking for a challenge, these games give you a good challenge without feeling unreasonable. Like, I know there's some platformers out there that are just, like, brutally difficult. Then there's some that are just ridiculously easy, like some of the new Super Mario Bros. Games are just too easy. But Returns, Tropical Freeze, the SNES games, they're all difficult, but feel fair. Like they're not going to punish people who aren't that familiar with the series that much. Like, there is a little bit of a learning curve, but you get used to it pretty quick. And then for the 3D games, so Donkey Kong 64 is kind of like a quirky game. I don't even think it's on Nintendo Switch Online, I could be wrong. And it's like, I talked about liking the collectathons, but Donkey Kong 64 goes a little far with that. Donkey Kong Bonanza, on the other hand, that's been lumped in with Mario games, but it is something completely different. It is very much a Donkey Kong game, it is not a Mario game. And it is one of my favorite 3D platformers, maybe ever. Like, I'd say my favorite 3D platformers ever would be most of the Mario ones, Astrobot, Donkey Kong Bonanza. So if you are interested in 3D platformers, even in the slightest, Donkey Kong Bonanza is just a very easy recommendation. And there are other Donkey Kong games, like Mario, there's a ton of Donkey Kong spin-offs. Not all of them are worth playing, but there's some fun ones if you can find them. Like, there's a couple on the DS, the GBA, there's Donkey Kong Barrel Blast, games that, like, they're not anything too crazy, but if you find them, they're fun games. But I feel like Donkey Kong gets, like, overlooked a lot. Same with Yoshi, with a new Yoshi game coming out. But I feel like Yoshi games are more, like, associated with Mario games, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if that logic makes sense at all. Probably it's just because they share some of the same characters, but with Donkey Kong games, there's not really any Mario characters. Like, there's characters that appear in Mario games, but not vice versa. So anyway, I just wanted to go over a few series that you should try if you're only into the big series right now, if that's mostly what you play. Because Nintendo has a lot of great games. Like there's a reason they have so many other series that are still pretty popular. Like, am I going to say that I like these better than Mario and Zelda? No, like, those are my two favorite Nintendo series. Same with Animal Crossing. I really like Animal Crossing. I really like Smash. Pokemon, not the biggest fan of. Splatoon, I didn't know if I should include that, but I think at this point it's just one of Nintendo's big series. But I just wanted to give some recommendations because I know a lot of people watch my videos just for Mario or Zelda content, but especially with the Nintendo Switch, where it's easier than ever to play other games. Because all you have to do if you have even the $20 NSO subscription is you could pretty much play any of the series that I mentioned. Besides Pikmin, I think. Like, you can play the older Fire Emblem games, you could play a lot of the Metroid games, you could play the SNES Donkey Kong games. So, if anything I said in this video, if any series sounds even a little interesting, you don't even need to spend any money. Just go on NSO, try out a game, and see if you like it. And if you do, there's a lot more games you could add to your backlog and enjoy, because Nintendo has not been releasing as many big games recently. Like, the second half of 2026 seems pretty barren so far. So while I would love for there to be a new 3D Mario or a new Zelda or a new Smash or something like that, I think this is also a good time to get into some of these other series. And then besides Nintendo themselves, like, just a quick shout out to some other series I like. Resident Evil games, especially with the most recent 3 games being on Switch 2. Easy recommendations for me. I love those games. However, those are more mature games. Like, maybe if you're looking for something like a little simpler, less graphic, those might not be for you. Astrobot, which I did mention, if you have a PS5, that's a must-play. One of the best 3D platformers I've ever played. The Metal Gear series, which you can mostly play on Switch. The only ones you can't play are Metal Gear Solid 5 and 4 and Peace Walker, but you'll be able to play those very soon because those are coming to Switch or Switch 2. And if you want my opinion on any other series, if maybe you want to have some questions, let me know in the comments and I give my thoughts on it if I have any. And if you made it to this point in the video, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.